Hi, welcome back to our second topic of the module Being Persuasive, which is challenges and importance of persuasive speech. I'm Zurina and I'll be sharing on this topic today. Okay, so what do we need to think of when we think about the challenges of persuasive speech? The first one, of course, cultural diversity. You have to remember that with cultural diversity increasing, the speech making becomes more complex and more difficult. Why? It's because of the differences in language from culture to culture. This is also because there are different meanings attached to gestures, to facial expressions, and probably to other non-verbal signals which vary from culture to culture. For example, let me share with you. In certain cultures, nodding means yes, but in other cultures, nodding means no. So this is why it is important to stress on avoiding ethnocentrism. Why? Because it often blocks communication between the speaker, for instance, me here, and the listeners who have different cultural backgrounds. The next one, like I said earlier, is ethnocentrism. How do we define it? First, of course, because we identify with our own group or our own culture and we see our own values, beliefs, and customs as right or natural. And then we make comparison to the values, to the beliefs and customs of the other group or culture, or even another one part of every other culture. So ethnocentrism could actually play a positive role in creating group pride and loyalty. However, we have to remember that ethnocentrism could lead to prejudice and hostility towards different races, ethnicities, religions, and cultural groups. How do we avoid it when we need to give persuasive speech? We have to keep in mind, firstly, that everyone has their own special beliefs and customs. In fact, sometimes even within that culture itself, they have different beliefs and customs. So in order to convince people who have different cultures to our own, we are actually we need to change their traditional ways of doing things, of thinking about things, of perceiving certain issues. With ethnocentrism, we have to show respect to that culture that we are addressing. We have to adapt our messages to the values and the expectations of the listeners or audiences that we are giving this persuasive speech to. How do we do this? Again, like I said in the last topic, we have to always try to put ourselves in their place so that they can hear your message through their ears and through their hearts. Now, another thing that you have to think about is the objective and also the audience and how we adapt to this. First of all, you have to think about the objectives that is probably more ambitious in persuasive speech rather than, when you're speaking to inform. And because of this, how you analyze your audience and how you adapt to this analysis becomes much more demanding. So first of all, when you're dealing with controversial topics that may touch on your listeners' basic attitudes, values, beliefs, or customs, you may actually increase their resistance to how you are persuading them or to what you are persuading them to. And of course, it's going to make your task more difficult. So in doing this, you have to contend to your audience's knowledge about your topic and also to their attitudes towards it. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one, which is still the listeners. But you have to consider some listeners, they are very strongly in favor of your position. Some may be neutral, but there are also a group of audiences who may be adamantly opposing to your position. So if there are listeners who strongly oppose to what you're saying, you can consider your speech is a success if it leads to even a few of them re-examining their views. They don't have to change it, but the fact that they are rethinking about it is already a success. Now, if you're thinking about the range of persuasive responses, you may want to think about, how you can visualize your listeners on a scale. And of course, it has to involve any movement by a listener from left to right of the scale, where some are actually adamantly opposing and then moving towards to the other side of the scale where they are actually maybe being neutral. So no matter where your listener begins, no matter how great or small the movement is, it's your success to actually persuade them. Another thing that you have to consider is the lines of argument that you're making. Sometimes these arguments may upset some parts of your audience and, it may fail, right? So no matter how expert you are on the topic, no matter how skillful you prepare the speech, no matter how captivating your delivery is, some listeners may not agree with you, and that is fine. But you have to remember, persuasion is not impossible. It's just that sometimes you should have a realistic sense of what you can accomplish or of what you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it. Why? Because, for example, you can't expect a steak lover to turn vegetarian as a result of your one speech. Now, let's move on to why do we do persuasive speech? First, as we recap to the previous topic, we talked about how we define persuasion. And today, I want to also re-emphasize this. So persuasion is actually a process of creating, reinforcing, or maybe slightly changing other people's beliefs or actions. And you would want to attract your listeners and get them to agree with the ideas that you share. If you think about it, why do we do this, right? What's the benefits for us? Let's think about it from the two ways. The first one, the fact that you could actually speak and write persuasively. You may want to start from your personal relations within your own community, your family members, to maybe being persuasive within community activities, and then of course to then your career aspirations or others' career aspirations. Another benefit of persuasion is that you can actually enhance your critical thinking. You use the power of critical thinking when you're being persuasive. How do you do this? You actually assess the barrage of persuasive messages through your knowledge of persuasion. Of course, when you're giving a speech or when you're giving a persuasive speech, you have to think about ethics. First, you have to ensure that your goals are ethical. It has to be ethically sound so that when it is being challenged or when it is being questioned, you can defend them ethically. So how do you do this? First, you got to study the topic thoroughly so that you won't mislead your audience through other shoddy research or muddled thinking. And of course, learn about different sides of the issue that you're trying to persuade, seek out competing viewpoints, and definitely get your facts right. And of course, be honest. You also have to be honest in whatever that you're sharing when you're persuading someone or a group of people. Don't deliberately make false or deceptive claims, which you would probably do by quoting out of context, portraying a few information as the entire story, and misrepresenting facts and figures as sources. You have to ensure that the statistic, the testimony, and other types of evidence that you present need to be done properly and accurately. Now, the last thing that you have to do is, of course, stay away from name calling, or don't use other forms of harsh languages when you're giving your persuasive speech. You have to ensure that any emotional appeal that you're making need to be appropriate to the topic, and that when you're building your speech, it has to be based on a firm facts and logic before you actually appeal to your audience's emotions. Now, finally, to our final slide, which is the reflection. Last topic, I also asked you to reflect, and today the reflection that I would like you to think about or reflect upon based on your own experience is this question. What is the most difficult challenge that you have faced when you're giving persuasive speech? I would like you to share one personal experiences with everyone around you. Thank you.